Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back and we are live. It is April 27th, 2017, and the third season of the No Name Cinema Society is upon us. It's so exciting. Hello, all. My name is Jonathan BETZLER. I am your host, one of your hosts, and this is the 39th meeting of the No Name Cinema Society. It is the first one of our new season. It's the first time we're talking about a film from 2017. It's been 2.5 months. No, it's been 2.5 months since our last regular season show at the end of regular season show. Geez, that was January. It's been 3.5 months since we talked about Live by Night in episode 38.1. And it's been 2 months since our year in review. So let me get right to the chase and let's talk to our my cohorts here. Let me introduce first, ladies and gentlemen, David Joseph. David, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
How have you been for the last 2 months?
I've been pretty busy.
Pretty busy. I mean, luckily I don't care. J Money, how are you?
I'm afraid to answer the question.
You've got a new wide-angle lens going.
Still the same, yeah. It's new. It's a new wide-angle lens now.
Right.
Right.
So, well, welcome back. Did you have a good hiatus in all seriousness?
Yeah, it was a pleasant respite from movies. So good to rest the eyes for a few months.
Well, that time is over now. JV Joe and J Money make up the rest of the No Name Cinema Society. This is April 27th. This is Thursday, April 27th, 2017. Couple fun things about April 27th historically is Davey Joe, you might appreciate this is the day that Nolan Ryan became the strikeout king in 1983. Became the new strikeout king. He still holds the record for the most strikeouts ever.
In 83, huh?
Yeah. Our audience loves Nolan Ryan, so that's why I wanted. Nolan Ryan pitched in the 60s, remember?
No,
he was on
the
the 69 Mets, so he was around. No, I don't know if anyone's going to break that record. J Money, you might appreciate this other April 27th tidbit. It is Cory Booker's birthday.
Cory Booker?
Yeah.
Street Fight.
The documentary about Cory Booker.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I can only hear you in bits and pieces, and I only listen to less than that. So, anyway, tonight's film is called The Promise. And for those of you who don't know, I'm in Los Angeles half the year, and the area of Los Angeles I live in is called Little Armenia. And The Promise is about the Armenian genocide. That the backdrop of The Promise is the Armenian genocide of 1915. And so that's the area I live in. In fact, just this past Monday, April 24th, there was a big parade in the streets just outside my door, and I've got a picture of it. This is just outside my door, celebrating the Armenian genocide just on the week that we're talking about the film The Promise.
I think they were commemorating it or memorializing it.
Yeah, it's not a celebration per se, but it was like a parade. Like, celebration is the wrong word. More like a remembrance, if you will. A lot of people don't know about the Armenian genocide. So finally we get the film about the Armenian genocide from a genocide expert in director Terry George. So here is the full schedule for the full slate of shows for the upcoming couple weeks. So here's the new deal for the third season, everybody. We're not going to be doing all these shows in a single night anymore. We're going to be doing them every 4 days. Starting tonight, as you can see, The Promise, and I can reveal to you now that in 4 days, on May the 1st, we're going to talk about our indie spotlight's going to be Killer Joe from director William Friedkin. We're going to be spotlighting indies from 2012 this year. Our classic on May 5th is David Lean's Brief Encounter, and our sound off is on May the 9th, which is going to be, we're going to have a tweet beat about, you have a lot of questions about our last episode, our finale, and also we're going to do our top 5 films from 2011, and I'm going to do a second run film from another 1966 film that we didn't get to talk about a lot on the show. How's that for an upcoming schedule, guys?
Sounds packed. Exciting.
Full slate, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and our aim for these shows is for them to unveil to you each of these nights at around 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. So that's the deal for 2017, the third season of No Name Cinema Society, and we'll see if it's working. J Money, what are you drinking tonight before we get into this?
I'm drinking cheap beer. Cheap beer out of a crystal glass.
That's funny. I'm drinking cheap wine, so it's like we switched. It's like a whole doppelganger.
Is it a crystal glass?
It is a glass. It's a clear glass.
That counts.
Little cupcake cab salve. You guys know the brand.
Cupcake.
Ooh.
Very nice.
Yeah. And Davey, you're drinking turpentine over there, right?
Yeah, you know it.
Shine. All right, guys.
That's a joke.
You guys ready for some hot summer reaction?
Yeah, let's hear it. Lay it on us.
Lay it on us. Okay, The Promise. Mikhail is an Armenian medical student in Constantinople when Turkey aligns with Germany at the outset of World War I. The Turkish government uses the war as an excuse to relocate the Armenians that reside in their country, which turned out to be a euphemism for extermination. The mostly non-violent Mikhail has to flee to the city to rescue his family, his betrothed, and the woman he's fallen for, and he constantly has to live on the run from the Turkish army that's determined to wipe them all out. So that is The Promise. Guys, how was my summary this time?
On spot.
On the spot. Davey Joe?
Yeah, I liked it.
Now, the big question what we're going to find is if they like the summary better than the film itself. Davey Joe, you're up first. Opening thoughts, what did you think of The Promise?
It's got some problems.
Okay, well, get into those. J Money.
Yeah, this promise is broken.
He's been practicing that all weekend. Okay, and for me, I would say it's a film that's heavy-handed and over the top. Does that sort of align with the problems that you guys are referring to?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I could add a few other things, but I think that kind of is how I feel about it too.
And I'm sure we will. I just wanted to get specific on your asses. So I do want to say some nice things about the direction of the film. Terry George is an accomplished director, and I made a joke, if you call it that, a few minutes earlier about, from a genocide expert, a film from a genocide expert. Terry George's probably best known film is Hotel Rwanda, which, although more recent times has some sort of similar stuff going on. Wouldn't you guys say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing I wanted to let you guys know, I don't know if I told you, but I want to let the audience know, the film opened this past weekend, opened April 21st. I saw it, I think it was on March 30th. I invited J Money to attend with me. It was a press screening. Sometimes I get invited to these now. And I was in New York, and J Money, you weren't able to go. It was like a 9 a.m. screening.
On a Tuesday.
Point is, I saw it. Yeah, on a Tuesday. So I saw it like a month ago now. So I apologize, and I'm just getting into it because it's fresh in your minds. But I'm glad we mostly all agree. But one thing I do want to say about the direction is I think it was competent in the very basics of film direction when it comes to shot selection, camera movement, blocking. There's no question for me in terms of, did this director have control over the story? Like sometimes that's the issue. Like Live by Night, the last current feature that we did, it was this example of a director seeming like they had no control over the story. I didn't feel like that was the case here. Here, I feel like it was more of an issue of tone. I feel like, he's making his point with a sledgehammer.
Yeah, it's funny, like walking out of this film, it makes me feel like there's a whole slew of films where I can recognize the fact that they're well crafted and that they are certainly competent in the way that they work as film in the cinema, but that they are flawed, like at the core from a story basis. There is nothing wrong with the way this movie looks. There's nothing wrong with the way it was shot. I think the acting is decent enough, I think. I guess to your point, JB, it goes through the motions effectively as a movie. It's not like it doesn't seem like a bad movie as much as I think that they just handled the subject matter the wrong way.
I want to dig into that, but I also don't want to exclude Davey. So Davey, did I hit on anything that was part of your quibbles?
Tone is the whole problem. How do you get, there's no more horrible thing that ever happened in genocide, and how are you supposed to care about a stupid love story when you're toggling back and forth from genocide to this love story? Like, who cares? Like, show me what's going on with these people. It's horrible. I that's what you're interested in.
And there's no nuance too. Like, at least when it comes to the political elements, they didn't even try to have any sort of any subtext or anything like that. They were so focused on drawing parallels to modern day issues, Syria, it loses sight of the actual storytelling.
It loses sight of the overall kind of point of the movie, which is, I think, to educate and talk about this sort of lost genocide that a lot of people, as you pointed out, JB, really don't know anything about. And I think to David Joe's point, to me, it was like, I thought the story in and of itself was not exactly compelling, but competent. But the problem is that it's such a vapid way of discussing the subject matter. It's such a vapid way of discussing a genocide that, I guess, as David just said, it was actually kind of It was certainly annoying. Was it offensive? Maybe it was. I don't know. You know, maybe it was kind of like a real disservice to the Armenian history of it.
Well, this might be a good segue to my next topic. And so, you know, why do you think what made it a vapid way to tell this story? Like, what was it? Because I mean, I have a theory on this, but I want to see what you say.
Well, the fact that it was trying to keep everybody's attention by drawing out this pointless love triangle. I mean, why turn a movie about this situation into a Lifetime original film? I mean, it didn't make any sense to, I don't know, increase the emotional content of this film by putting in unrequited love or like, you know, unresolved love issues. As if like people had to film more about this for some reason.
Davey hinted at that earlier, and I had it in my screenplay section, so this was the more natural segue. But yeah, I mean, it's almost seemed like the love story seemed like a burden, you know, to Terry George. You know, and as a result, the script seemed muddled, whether it was or not. Like, my instinct is that the script itself was fine or decent, and then when Terry George got involved with this, you know, highly politicized point of view, he sort of stripped away at the love story and then made it about the genocide, which is fine, but then lose more of the love story because now it just seemed a mess. I think it's a good idea in theory to tell a personal story amidst the genocide story, because a story about the overall genocide would have been too sprawling. But he didn't seem interested in the love story at all. And I think a good example is a film that you guys haven't seen yet, but it was the classic we talked about in episode 6, Dr. Zhivago, chose the love story first, and the political turmoil was the backdrop, and as a result, they're both sort of strong. You know what I mean? But I mean, like, it was very clear on what was number one, and this was not. Or, I mean, I think my theory is the initial script, the love story was number one, and then this got pushed aside. You know, like as the development process and the editing and the shooting, that got pushed aside.
Well, you know, I think part of the problem is that the water diviner came out a year ago and got really raked over the coals, I think, for good reason, by just absolutely whitewashing the Armenian genocide, just not even acknowledging it or mentioning it, and then releasing it the same weekend, you know, during the remembrance. So I think it was the same day on the 24th. So, you know, I think there was some sensitivity there. But you're right. Just cut down the love story altogether, and I think that was the right decision to make. And he didn't really commit to that.
One thing about the screenplay that I thought was interesting, I mean, like, it was awfully, you know, heavy-handed, and I wondered if a different approach that might have been better is something that's more exploratory instead of condemning of the genocide. Now, I'm not saying that it should condone the genocide, but that does its own work on its own. You know what I mean? Like, it's automatically bad. So you don't need to, like, give us example after example of that. No amount of carnage makes us feel different about it. It would have been really interesting choice to try and understand the depth of the Turkish hatred. I mean, am I off base there? I mean, like, that's what I kept thinking about, because it was just so black or white. And I don't think things politically ever really are.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I felt was a big loss in this movie was that they failed to kind of set up the reasoning, or not the reasoning, but like basically the climb into how this actually really happened. I guess they went in assuming that we had a base understanding as an audience about the basic, you know, problems there, but I would have liked to seen sort of like how the country itself sort of tore itself apart and fell down to the point that it became at, and they just completely sidestepped that. It just goes from them as a happy unit to them being persecuted without really any kind of context for it.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, and that's the same issue that I have with a film from 1983 called The Year of Living Dangerously. Have you guys seen The Year of Living Dangerously, out of curiosity?
No.
Davey, Mel Gibson, Sigourney Weaver? Oh, wow. It's a Peter Weir film. The other thing about the screenplay is that does not happen in The Year of Living Dangerously is two-dimensional characters. The result of the heavy-handedness is, I mean, like, these characters as written, and I think there's a good performance or two, but the characters are sort of flat. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, there's a couple, you know, there's the three main leads, but otherwise, a lot of the other characters, which are really, you know, at these really emotional moments, kind of like driving the plot, are kind of forgettable and kind of like swept under the carpet as terrible things happen to these characters in general.
And I mean, and as a part and parcel of the other point, anybody that's Turkish is, I mean, except his one friend, anybody else is pure evil, and everybody knows that the best villains have layers and dimension.
There was another guy, the guy that warned the pastor. I mean, there were a couple.
He wasn't Turkish. Oh, the guy that warned the pastor. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, yeah. But you're right. I mean,
that doesn't make that character three-dimensional. It just means
no, but it made at least it showed that there were some
there was one Turkish person that didn't want to kill Armenians.
Like 1.5.
1.5. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, his friend seemed like he hated all the other Armenians, just the few that he liked. So anyway, we don't have a lot of time left, but I did want to talk about some performances. Does anybody? There was some issues like with casting. Like there was. I mean, like I don't know, with Armenians maybe it's okay, but there was a lack of ethnic actors here, which is. I thought we were past that in Hollywood, but I mean, like, at the same time, I think Oscar Isaac is a brilliant actor, and I thought he did a great job, quite frankly. But do we have an issue with that choice? Do we need like a more appropriate actor, or?
I did find it a little bit cynical. I mean, obviously at this point, everyone knows what Oscar Isaac is. Like everybody knows he's definitely not Armenian, and for him to be kind of held up as this like Armenian hero, basically in this film, is kind of a disservice to the whole point of the movie in a lot of ways.
And also Charlotte Laban too, and they force-fed this French, like they're like, oh, I studied in France. That was such like a force-fed line. Like, was that highly necessary?
Right, right.
I mean, it's not like Armenians. I don't know. I guess they blend a little bit more. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm going down the wrong rabbit hole here, but I had an uncomfortable feeling with the lack of ethnic casting in the Armenian side.
Yeah. I will say this: Oscar Isaac knows how to drool effectively. He's a very good drooler. As somebody that's trying to emote pain, he just sort of lets it out. He just sort of like unleashes.
Do you have anything on the politics of the casting?
It is kind of strange. I mean, I'm sure there's any number of great actors that they could have chosen that are Armenian. You're right.
But they wouldn't necessarily sell movies, so I get the flip side of it too. But I mean, listen, Hotel Rwanda, like Don Cheadle is not African.
That's true. Yeah.
Is that any different? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's
part.
So it's fair.
Puts on an accent.
But Hotel Rwanda is also sort of a biopic, right? I mean, it's sort of based on it's based on actual people, characters are actually based on real people. And I don't think in this case they were, right? I mean, I kept waiting to see at the end the photographs of the real people they were portraying, because to me that was the only reason they might have gone through the plot they did, because otherwise the plot was like pointless to me, And when that didn't happen, it just felt really even more contrived to me. I guess from that perspective, I don't think that they have as much of an excuse to have picked such a wider, diverse cast.
Yeah, and the buzzer rang. So I do want to talk about Christian Bale too, because he's an actor that a lot of other actors admire, and I just can't get behind him. I mean, he had a couple good performances early in his career, like Machinist and Rescue Dawn were extraordinary. But it's like he just lost it, and he's trying so hard to get back again, time and time again. And I feel that every time I see him now, even in The Big Short, a movie I loved. Guys, how do you feel about Christian Bale in this movie?
I thought he was fine, but I also thought that was probably the easiest part. Anything he's bad is certainly not memorable.
Well, at least he didn't have to play an Armenian. J-Money?
Yeah, I mean, I actually like Christian Bale most of the time, but I found his affectation in this movie really annoying and really in the way.
So we're on board on that as far as this movie's concerned.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's something. Okay. So is there anything I didn't cover, guys, as far as this movie's concerned? We covered direction, screenplay, and performances, the basics. Is there more that you guys wanted to say that I have one thought that I meant to bring up, but I forgot. But is there anything else that you guys had?
No, I think we're good.
The one thing that I wanted to mention to you guys is that the special effects were pretty bad. Especially when they tried any sort of set extension or anything like that, anything that looked out on the Turkish Sea or what have you. Those visual effects were very obvious in a movie that is not that small of a budget, and it felt very fake and unfortunate, and so that took me out of it. I mean, it's a small, normally I don't really care that much about that sort of thing, but I mean, the movie was weak enough that it you know, just added to the list of things.
I did notice that there was, I mean, every time they do a wide pan of Istanbul, basically, I'm sorry, of Constantinople.
Constantinople,
not Istanbul.
not Istanbul.
It was basically the same shot of like of the bay there and of a steamer coming into it. I mean, it was always pretty much the same exact thing. And I kept thinking, yeah, they basically built one thing in a CG model, and that's just, they got to use it up as much as possible. Just like change the camera angle on that model and see what they can do.
Yeah, I completely agree. Davey, any thoughts on the VFX before we go?
No, not really. It didn't really strike me.
It didn't bother him. Okay, so guys, that's The Promise. That's our review of The Promise. Hopefully we covered all the bases. Let me know what you guys think, that you as in the watching, viewing audience. Our live audience here is live applause. Excellent, very exciting. Guys, we get applause. It's not often you get that feeling, so it's very cool. Although, you know, it might have been, you know, I might have paid for it. But that's beside the point. Our next current feature that we're going to talk about is on May 18th. May 18th, 2017. We're going to talk about the Goldie Hawn, Amy Schumer comedy Snatched. That's coming up on May 18th. It opens on May the 12th, I think. And we're going to get our more female comedy fun with Snatched. And that'll be our next current feature. But you'll see us before then. In 4 days, on May the 1st, we're going to have our first indie spotlight of the year, and we're going to do some more Matthew McConaughey fun with Killer Joe, directed by William Friedkin. That's our indie spotlight. We'll see you on the May the 1st.